But who thinks they're a trustworthy person? I don't think many of us do. Okay, do you know somebody maybe in your life that you've worked with that you're like, yeah, I can't quite trust that person, but I can't quite put my finger on it? Okay, we've had that happen. Okay, so today what I'm going to do is walk you through a framework about trust that's going to give you some things to think about and reflect on personally, and we're going to have some time for reflection and group discussion. But it also may help you realize why those people that you're like, can't quite put my finger on why I don't trust them, it may help you figure that out, okay? And just a bit of context about this framework. It comes from about 20 years of research from a group called the Trust Edge Leadership Institute. And it's work that I've participated in when I was in my corporate life, and now I get to use this with groups and teams, okay? So before we get started with that, hopefully the technology works, and we're going to start with a video. Here it goes.
Buddy, your sister wants to try something that's called a trust fall. She just learned how to do it.
Okay.
You want to try it?
Sure.
It's super easy. All right, what you need to do is you close your eyes, and then you're going to fall, but she's going to catch you.
Okay.
All right? You promise to get your brother, right?
Yeah.
All right, good. So close your eyes. Now go catch your brother. All right, on the count of 3, I want you to fall, but she'll catch you. 1, 2, 3. Oh, no.
Okay. All right, so what does that tell you about trust? Let's make this a little bit interactive. What lessons can you get out of that about trust? It's not her mistake. Okay. All right, what else? Lack of communication. Okay, good one. What else? Trust but verify. Okay. Put yourself in the boy's shoes. Who was he listening to? His dad. He just did what his dad told him, right? He didn't really question it, even though it was his sister. Okay, so if you're the sister, what are you thinking? Huh? He went, okay, I know what my siblings would be saying about each other. Okay, so I use this video to kind of tee it up, and George, I want to come back to what you said, communication. Communication's a really big piece of this, okay? The dad was giving him lots of instructions, but was it enough? Not quite, okay? And now at the end of this, the boy's like, okay, you told me to fall, and I fell, and now I got a broken nose or whatever. Okay. Okay, so let's keep going. So how do you define trust? What are some words that you would use or behaviors that you would use to define trust? Honest, okay. What else? Dependable. What else? I'm sorry? Believable? You believe them, okay. Yeah. Integrity? Clarity, yes, especially with communication. Okay, great. Those are all great things, and those are all going to come up as we go through this framework. So, what does the Bible say about trust? The trust is mentioned a lot in the Bible. There's a lot of verses about trusting God. There's a lot of verses about being trustworthy and how we are to trust others. Okay, so let's look at a couple of those before we get into this framework. So in Psalm 20, verse 7, some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord our God. So this is really all about putting our trust in God. And so when we think about this framework of trust, there may be some of us who have had experiences where we say, well, how can I trust God if fill in the blank has happened, okay? And so we have the same kind of relationship or the same kind of expectation of clarity and confidence in being able to trust, okay? Okay, let a man so consider us as servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. Moreover, it is required in stewards that one be found faithful. So what St. Paul is telling us here in 1 Corinthians, he's using the word faithful, but it can also be substituted with trustworthiness, is required by anyone entrusted with spiritual responsibilities. And we could kind of even extend this a little bit further, that this really applies to anybody who serves, which is really most of us. We serve in some capacity. So that service requires us to be faithful and trustworthy in whatever we're entrusted with. Okay, this is about dealing with others. So from Proverbs 25:19, confidence in an unfaithful or untrustworthy man in a time of trouble is like a bad tooth and a foot out of joint. So translated, this basically means relying on somebody who's unfaithful or untrustworthy is like relying on a broken tooth, so not really useful, or a broken leg. Are we that broken tooth or broken leg for others? And this is where I want you to start to reflect as we go through these 8 pillars. Okay? So let's look at a textbook definition of trust. Trust is a confident belief in a person, product, or organization that they are going to do what they say they are going to do. So if we think about something like an airline, like Delta, I don't see Ramsey. Oh, Ramsey is here. Talking about Delta, we put faith in Delta that they're going to get us from here to there on time. Okay, so we trust that they'll do that. Think about any product that you buy, maybe a medicine, your car. You put faith and trust that they're going to do what it is that they say they're going to do. So now let's look at some data related to trust. Number one way to influence changing somebody else's opinion is a trusted relationship. So here's a really good example. If I'm going to go buy a car, and I think I'm going to buy car A or B, and I go to Father Nate because I trust him, and I say, Father Nate, should I buy car A or B? And I'm asking him this from a spiritual perspective, more of just his knowledge of technology. He's probably going to tell me, go for this one versus that one, and here's why. And because I trust him, I'm going to take that opinion into consideration. I may go to somebody else, and same thing. So the idea is those trusted relationships can influence people's opinions more than what I might see on social media or some kind of news article or whatever, okay? So when you have that trustworthy relationship with somebody, you can influence them. Number one reason why people want to work for an organization. Okay, so for those who work in corporate, any guesses? Trust in what? That they're going to pay you? Okay. So very close. So it's trusted leadership. You want to trust that whoever you're going to go work for, they're going to do things in a trustworthy manner, and that you can trust the leadership of that organization. I would argue this applies to if you're going to volunteer your time with an organization, you're going to donate money to an organization, anywhere where you're going to put your resources, you want to trust that leadership before you invest in that. 9 out of 10 Americans would not refer products or services to an organization they don't trust. So this even goes where our pocketbooks go. Okay, so all of this is talking about the importance of trust. So let's get into these 8 pillars. There's 8 of them. They all start with C. It makes it easy to remember. I'm going to super quickly walk through all 8. We're going to do a deep dive on commitment, and that's where we're going to spend our time in our group discussions. I actually have a little worksheet that I'm going to pass out in a few minutes, and we're going to separate into groups and do a deep dive on commitment, okay? Okay, so clarity, that came up a few times, especially when we were talking about the video. So people trust what's clear and distrust what's ambiguous. People trust what they understand, whether it's setting clear expectations, communicating openly, or clarifying roles and responsibilities. Clarity removes uncertainty. How many of us have worked at a place where roles and responsibilities aren't clear? And all of a sudden, yeah, I see lots of hands go up. All of a sudden, you're like, are they doing this? Am I doing this? Do I need to go double check that they're going to do this? I see some heads nodding. Okay, so clarity is really one of the foundations of being able to trust others, okay? Thinking about our spiritual life, clarity really comes through prayer, scripture, and wise counsel. So just like in our personal and professional lives, this clarity is also important in our spiritual life. And so when we have that clarity, we're able to move with confidence, make decisions, and also show up for others with purpose and peace. And we're going to take a deeper dive at clarity next week. Okay, compassion. So quick question. As part of the research that the Trust Edge Leadership Institute did, they asked people, who is the one person you would trust the most in your life? What do you think the most common answer was globally? Mom, yes, 100%. Why? Why? Because moms give of themselves. Moms serve others without expecting or getting anything in return. It's the same reason why we trust people like nurses or teachers or firefighters. Those that are in service roles, they're constantly giving of themselves for others without expecting anything in return. And so that ties to this pillar of compassion. People put faith in those who care beyond themselves. If they see that you're not out just for yourself, there's a level of trust that gets built up, okay? This isn't just about being nice or kind. It's truly about putting the needs of others above yourselves. And this is really the heart of service when we think about serving in the church community. Yes? You have a different opinion of the dads? Okay, I guess the dads can be compassionate. Survey didn't say that. The survey said moms. But thank you. That's a good point. There are dads that also do this as well. So we're not leaving out the dads. I do want to take this back to Scripture for a second. There are several verses about Christ showing compassion to others, and that word is exactly used that way. Christ had compassion on them. And St. Paul tells us in Galatians to carry each other's burdens. So this is around looking out for the needs of others, finding a way to serve others without thinking about ourselves. So ask yourself this: is there somebody in your life who's carrying a burden of some kind? And how are you called to help with that? Is there some way, somebody that you can reach out to that you know is carrying a burden that you can be compassionate about? Okay, character. People notice who do what's right over what's easy. This one's really easy to say, but character is really the bedrock of trust. In business, this might be integrity, ethics, honesty, things like that, but that also spills over into our personal life and our spiritual life. While the pillars of clarity and compassion speak to what we do, character speaks to how we do it, okay? So here's a question. Would you follow you? Would you follow yourself as a leader? I know that question makes me pause, okay? And I'll give an example. I'm looking around the room. I know several of us here have teen drivers, right? We've taught our teenagers how to drive. Okay, so here's an example that'll really make you think. So we tell them, don't speed, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Okay, I see some heads going down already. But yet when they get in the car with us, what do we do? Okay, I hope my kids aren't seeing this video. So here's really the way to think about character. Would you follow you in your personal life, in your professional life, in your spiritual life? Am I the same person in public versus in private? Am I the same here versus when I go out there? And do you use the same set of values in all areas of your life? Or do you say, well, over here at work, I can do that because it's at work versus in other areas of my life? So that's really what speaks to the heart of character. It's about doing what's right over what's easy, even when it's not convenient. Okay, competency. I have a funny story to tell about this pillar. So I was actually doing a workshop last week, and I use this typical example when I talk about competency that before we go to a doctor, we typically are going to look up their credentials. Particularly if there's some kind of procedure involved, you want to see like how many of these have they done? You know, is this their first one? You want some information to put your trust in this medical professional maybe that you haven't met before. So I was doing this workshop and somebody raised their hand and she's like, I do that with my hairdresser. And it kind of got me to think that, yeah, you don't want to go get a haircut and look like you came out of the 80s or the 90s. And so in all our professions, we need to stay fresh, relevant, and capable. We need to stay up to speed on what's new, you know, whether that's going to conferences, reading, staying ahead of technology. And so it really applies across the board in what we do. You don't just kind of set it and forget it, okay? I would imagine all of us in all of our jobs have some kind of continuing education. You do something to do that. And when others see you doing that, learning and growing and contributing more and seeing that competent behavior, that adds to trust, okay? So spiritually, for those who were here during the sermon today, Father Nate brought this up about we're all given some gifts. How do we use those gifts? So we're given some competencies, some talents. How do we leverage those and apply those or keep them to ourselves? So ask yourself, am I using the gifts that God's given me? Or am I holding those back in some way? All right, commitment. This is the one we're going to do a deep dive on. But to set it up, so people believe in those who stand through adversity. When we look at strong leaders, we see that they've typically sacrificed something over the course of their life. So before we kind of get into this pillar, a little fun fact. So tattoos. People get tattoos as a sign of commitment. It might be the name of a person. It might be a cross. It might be something else. So again, just a little factoid here. Can anyone guess what's the number one brand that is tattooed on people? I heard cross. What else? Think about a brand. Nike? No. Huh? Think about a brand, like a brand of a product that people get tattooed. Yeah. No. Yeah, like people getting a tattoo of themselves of a brand. We're not, so we may not know that, but if you just see people, okay. No? Okay, who rides a motorcycle in here? Anybody rides a motor? Harley. Look at this. I'm not suggesting this, but this guy's committed. Okay? This guy's committed. Okay. I use that just, again, to kind of get you to think. Look at what people do when they're committed to something. Okay? So, think about a time when somebody made a promise to you and did not keep it. How did that make you feel? Disappointed. You felt bad? Mad? Okay, kind of angry. How could they do that? All right, let me flip the script. Think of a time when you made a promise to somebody else. You didn't keep it. How did that make you feel? A little guilty? You felt good? That you didn't? Like back at you at somebody else? Okay, you didn't do something, I'm going to get you right back? Okay. Yeah. Okay, what else? Do we make excuses for ourselves? Yeah, we say, well, I had to do this for the kids, or this got in the way, or whatever. Okay, psychologically, we judge others by their actions and ourselves by our intentions. Well, I meant to do that. I still let the other person down. We have a double standard when we look at others missing their commitments to us versus us missing our commitments to somebody else. How many times have you told somebody, let's go get coffee, or let's go do this, and you don't? Or at work, somebody says, hey, Shirley, can you get me this thing? And you say, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll flip it around. You ask me, and I say, I'll get it to you tomorrow, and tomorrow comes and goes, and I forgot, okay? People remember these things. When we think about the church doesn't necessarily run on convenience. It runs on commitment. People showing up to do certain things. There's a lot of people that serve in the church behind the scenes. There's also commitments to think about our Sunday school program. How many people are committed to serve over there? If they just said, okay? Trust is built when people serve faithfully, both in the church and at work, okay? So again, we're going to do a deep dive on commitment in just a couple minutes. We got 2 more quick pillars to go through. So connection. People trust those who are willing to connect and collaborate. Building trust is a 2-way street, and connection plays a really critical role. Why do we do coffee hour out there? Why does Father Nate tell us, go meet somebody new? Okay? That connection builds trust over time. Taking it kind of outside of these 4 walls, maybe in your personal life or your professional life, think about connecting with others at work through whether it's storytelling, collaboration, asking people what they think, just being transparent, vulnerable, or just asking curious questions. That's a really strong way to connect with others. So ask yourself this: am I known by others in this community, or do I keep others at arm's length? Are we making an effort to connect? Okay, contribution. People respond to results. Think about where you work and who stands out. It's the ones that go above and beyond and make an effort, right? You see the results of their work. Whether through it's your expertise, your time, your resources, contributing to the success of others builds goodwill and trust. So this really is about going above and beyond and adding value, whether it's to your peers, your team, your customers, or your church community. So ask yourself, what has God placed in my hands to serve him and others around me? And am I using that? Am I contributing? Consistency. It's the little things done consistently that can make a big difference. This pillar ties them all together. This could be consistency in your actions, decisions, behavior. When others know they can depend on you, trust deepens. Now, there's 2 types of consistency. There's personal consistency, which is your reputation. What are you known for? And there's what's called organizational consistency, which is your brand. So think about brands with whom we interact and what are they known for. Are they consistent in delivering that? So a great example here is Chick-fil-A. I presume everybody's been through a Chick-fil-A drive-through. You know you're gonna get in the line. The experience is the same every place you go. The food is the same every place you go. They've built their brand on that. Thinking to the church, spiritual growth comes through consistency. We have liturgy every week. We have same prayers every week. Somebody may say, well, Father Nate, we do the same thing every week. Why? Well, it's through that consistency and repetition, okay? So ask yourself, where in your spiritual life do I need to show up more consistently, even when it might be difficult? So every interaction that we have, whether in these four walls or outside, either adds trust or takes away from trust. Okay, so just to kind of bring this back home, so I wanted to pick up on this verse from Luke. So he who is faithful, trustworthy, in what is least is faithful also. He who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much, and he who is unjust in what is least is unjust also in much. So this really ties back to being trustworthy. If we're not trustworthy in the little things, we're not going to be trustworthy in the big things. And then last verse here from Proverbs, commit your works to the Lord and your thoughts will be established. So this really ties back to that pillar of commitment. So what we're going to do now, I've got a handout. I'm going to hand this out in just a second. There's a small little quiz at the top. It's 5 questions, really, really fast. Answer those 5 questions to yourself. There's some personal questions. And then get in groups of maybe 4 and look at the questions at the bottom and have some conversation around this pillar of commitment. And I have some pens, if anybody, so the front page, by the way, if I could just see one for a second, yeah. The front